I want to kick things off, and I just want to speak about international football just generally, because every time the international break comes around, it's who cares about England versus Latvia away, or who cares about Georgia versus Spain, or who cares about Germany versus fucking Lithuania, or shit like that, right? And it's always club football is better than international football. International football is boring, etc., etc. Right? Which there's a sentiment to that. There's a sentiment to that in which I partly agree with. Um, on average, international football can be quite boring, can be quite monotonous, and can be quite just get through it type thing. However, it can also be really, really entertaining, and it builds. I think international football is a process. It's a process. You build up to it. Like you really do build up to it. It's like you build up 3 years till a tournament. Every 3 years or every 4 years there's a tournament, but it's built up it's built up through the previous 3 years, and I feel like those storylines and that whole narrative can't be underestimated in terms of how much it means to a lot of people, and how much impact it has, and just how much influence it has. I also feel like it's a little bit of a, I don't want to take a shot at like England and Spain and Germany and all this stuff, but I feel like I wouldn't even say it's a big country mindset. I genuinely think it's almost exclusively an English mindset when it comes to international football. I think international football is the purest form of football there is, because it takes away, most of the time, it takes away all the politics, all the kind of transfer negotiations. It takes away all this external stuff that plagues football, and that runs football, essentially the business side of things, and it's purely down to your country, the people that have grown up and that represent your country versus another country in the purest sport in the world. I think it's great. I think international football, I should go as far as say it's underrated. Like in the grand scheme of things, right? There's obviously there's obviously caveats to that, and I do agree. Like when it's an international break, the Premier League has just started. I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of the anger around international football is almost exclusively because the international breaks exist. Like, yeah, we're 4 weeks, 5 weeks into the Premier League season. Can we not just keep the momentum going? Like the Premier League was like really kicking off. Like there was a couple of good storylines. Like, obviously City's good start. Arsenal, how are they going to respond? How are United going to respond off the back of last year? Liverpool, how's their new midfield going to go? Chelsea, can they get things going? Can Brighton start to kick into gear? Can Newcastle, etc. Right. So there was a lot of there's a lot of kind of good storylines around the Premier League that have been halted because of this international break. And it's an international break that is arguably the most monotonous international break, because it's not World Cup qualifiers, so it's not the pinnacle. And even though, and it's the European Championship qualifiers and also friendlies, which are awful. But the European Championship qualifiers, we're in the stage of, it's not the start of the qualifiers, so it's not, you don't get that buzz and that excitement of, here we go, qualification campaigns kicked off, let's go into it type thing. But it's also not the end of it, where it's like, if Spain lose and Scotland win, Spain can be knocked out or whatever, right? It's those it's those 4 games smack bang in the middle of the qualification campaign that no one really cares about, because if you're a big nation, you should win those games and you should qualify. If you're a small nation, yeah, it means a lot, but more often than not, it doesn't really fall your way. And then you get to the friendlies. Like Australia played a friendly against Mexico, which I'll cover briefly. I'm going to spoil it right now. I didn't watch it. It was on Saturday morning, I think it was, or Sunday morning, and I was extremely hungover, so I didn't watch it. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I think this international break has come at a bad time, which has fueled the fire of all the what's better, international football, club football. I think looking at it from a holistic perspective, I understand why a lot of people are so connected and are so passionate about club football, especially in countries where club football is far more local. Like in Australia, it's very much city based. and there are very few cities in Australia, whereas in England and in other countries, it's basically towns and it's almost essentially villages who represent you. So it's far more localized, and I understand the passion behind that. But in the same vein, it's also your country, like it's your people. It is you, like that you're being represented by your national team. And I think the World Cup in particular, and even the Euros and even the Asian Cup for Australians and obviously other Asian countries, it provides this just passion, like this pure passion. Like I've never felt so emotionally invested for a sport than I have at World Cups. At the 18 World Cup, at the 2015 Asian Cup, I should say, even the Matildas not long ago, and obviously the Socceroos in Qatar in November and December. I've never felt as emotionally invested. Like I've seen Melbourne Victory win championships, I've seen them win FFA Cups, I've seen them play in the Asian Champions League. I've seen Chelsea win Champions League, seen Chelsea win FA Cups, and seen them win Premier Leagues and League Cups and everything. But I never feel as emotionally invested in a sport as when I do when my nation is playing. Maybe that's a personal thing. Maybe that's also because of I love the underdog stories in football and in sport, and because Australia naturally aren't a powerhouse on the footballing stage. Every match means a lot. Every single game is like do or die, especially when it comes to tournaments. It's like Australia can't play a boring game like post the second round of qualifiers for any tournament. Like we can't play a boring game because it's always we're versing China, but we're versing China away, and China away are tough. Or we're going to Iraq, but we have to go to the Middle East, and Australia don't travel well to the Middle East. Or we verse Iran are really good. Or we verse Japan are really good. South Korea, Saudi Arabia, all these countries, right? So yeah, you're always emotionally invested, and you're always like there's always a dog in the fight in a sense. When it comes to you've always got a dog in the fight in a sense when it comes to international football, especially being from Australia, and obviously me being Greek as well, me having Greek ancestry, I keep very close eye on the Greek national team as well. Hopefully they qualify and I can go to Germany next year and follow the boys around. They went 1-1 in this qualification campaign for they went 1-1 in this qualification, kind of in this group of fixtures, which puts them in an okay position. Need to upset France or Netherlands in the next group, but they should in the next kind of block of fixtures. But if they can do what they need to do, they could sneak a second place automatic qualification. But Greece already have the playoff chance because they won their Nations League group, which is great. Anyway, I'm digressing. But yeah, maybe the whole me preferring international football is because of the whole backs against the wall, underdog team. Every single game is competitive. Every single game is a fight. Whereas if I was English or if I was Spanish, and we versed Latvia and Lithuania and Georgia and Liechtenstein and San Marino and all these countries, right? Which is like, you should win comfortably. You're rotating players, your rotating systems, and it's far more of a step to get to the World Cup rather than an experience itself. I think it's quite one of those things, yeah, where it's like it'd be far different. Like, also considering the history of Australia in particular, like obviously what Australia went through post the 74 World Cup or 70 World Cup. Obviously with the, what was it, 6 or 7 or 8 failed qualifications in a row or whatever stupidness that was. Obviously following Aloisi's, and then once you had Aloisi's in 06, we qualified automatically for 10. 14 was Josh Kennedy against Oman, I think it was, at City Football Stadium. 18 was... 18? What was 18? Oh, 18 was the 3-2 win against Syria. That was mental. That was mental. And then obviously... And then Redmayne in Qatar, which was, like, insane as well. Australia don't... We really, like, don't... We really keep our fans emotionally invested in every single game. Maybe that's why I like the international football so much, because whenever I think of international football, I think of Australia versus Oman away from home. We need to win, and we're 1-0 down for some reason, right? And it's always it's always dramatic. It's always really painful and really hard. Like obviously Aloisi's an F5, like I said, and Josh Kennedy's goal to qualify for 14, and then the two-legged tie against Syria in 2017 to go to the 18 World Cup, and then Redmayne in fucking June of last year to qualify for Qatar. Like, it's just always dramatic, whereas English people, probably barring Beckham's free kick against Greece, it's very much win your 10 qualification games, get a goal difference of plus 60, and just go. Like, it's not really a journey, it's kind of just you're there, and it's just pointless games. Whereas for Australians, it's like, oh, every single game matters, because we aren't that good in the grand scheme of things, firstly. And even in Asia, we're not the best team in Asia. Like, we struggled to qualify in the old World Cup system. In the new one, we should be okay. But also, it's like this country just does everything so painful. Like, we can never do anything simple. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I like international football. But yeah, it is one of those things. It's about like a community aspect as well, I guess, right? And like I said, at the end of the day, it's like, it's what you identify with the most, like I said, with the identification thing and how you feel represented. If you feel represented more by your club, then great. I understand why you would care more about club football in that respect. But if, like me, I feel more represented by my country, I think I do. Yeah, especially with, like, I would never feel, and once again, maybe it's because Australia is just this stupid football anomaly that, and our story won't and hasn't been and probably will never be replicated in terms of our narrative around football in this country, and probably my stance on it and how passionate I'm about it probably lends myself to being more passionate about the Socceroos more than anything, right? But I've never seen a country more united, like with the Matildas, not like a couple of weeks back. Like the whole country was just fucked. Like the whole country was insane, and they're the scenes that I love. And even with the Socceroos, right? And like Fed Square in Melbourne being packed out at 6 a.m. to watch Australia versus Argentina, or like staying up to 2 a.m. to watch fucking Australia beat Denmark and stuff. Like no other sport can do that. So maybe that's why international football means more to me. It'll be interesting to see the pure perspective from people from bigger countries, or from bigger countries. I mean, literally bigger countries in terms of population, but also in terms of like football acumen. I know obviously there's political factors around England and why some people don't support the English national team, because the whole I know obviously Scouse people say they're Scouse, not English, because of the government and the Tories and all that stuff, and other football relating things, which is fair enough, I guess, right? And that's probably why club football is held in such high acumen there in comparison to here, because of the representation. I feel like the representation from fans to their club, I feel like in Australia, the Socceroos represent the common person a lot more than what clubs do. Whereas in countries like England, their club that fans support represents them more than the national team. I feel like that's probably a consensus. Obviously, there's anomalies and there's exceptions to every rule, but I feel like that's more often than not the case. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because of the history of the clubs in other countries in comparison to Australia. Maybe it's because of political factors or social factors or whatever, right? But I feel like that's how it is. And would I swap it? Maybe. I also like how passionate fans are about the Socceroos. But also I would love it if they were as passionate about the A-League, which is the next step, I think. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things.